Well, good Sunday morning. I'm Jaden Jefferson, and welcome to this week's Community Focus. This morning, I am joined by Lancz, who is an investment advisor here in the Toledo area. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure, Jaden.
So, of course, money is a big thing right now, and it has been these last couple of years with the pandemic. But recently, we've seen a couple bank collapses here in the country, and I know for some people that was concerning. So, for people that are maybe new to investing or have been investing for a while, what advice would you have for them?
Well, there's two different things. If you have the money at the bank, per account, it's insured if it's an FDIC bank up to 250,000. So we had a lot of people that, concerned, should I take my money out of the bank, and that type of thing. So per account, 250. If you're married, that's 500,000 for a joint account, individual account. If you have IRAs, that's a separate account. So there's really no need to panic. That would be the first thing I'd like to, let your viewers know. And then secondly, on the investment side, investing in the bank, like the stocks of the bank, whole different animal. I mean, a lot of those stocks are down 20, 40%. So keep in mind, when they say you're insured, or the bank's getting bailed out, that's your savings, your money market, your now accounts. The stock is a whole different matter. And just because the last two here, they, as far as covered all the uninsured deposits, in other words, if you had 2 million in, they would cover the whole 2 million. Do not count that they're going to do that for the future bailout. So I would still adhere to 250,000 or less and have two banking relationships. If you're a company, the Silicon Valley Bank, they notice that right away. It's like, we can't make payroll because this bank's closing, right? If you had two banking relationships, they easily transfer that money the same day and they made payroll. But if you don't, then you're scrambling to set up that account. So again, for small business owners, have two relationships, maybe one national and then one local, like here in Toledo.
And of course, you're very well known here in the area, but also nationally. And you've been in this industry for a while now, and I'm sure you've seen different things happen over time. Have you seen what's happening right now before, or is this new territory?
Every time it's different, right? So it's a situation where we have not seen it to that degree within 48 hours. And a lot of that is just, again, the as far as social media, doing it electronically. Some of the biggest, the billionaires of that bank of Silicon Valley, they were on a ski trip. And on the bus to go to the ski lodge, they were transferring money out. You wouldn't see that in the old days. In the old days, they had their passbook, they're waiting in line at the bank to open, etc. And that was the old run on the banks. So this is a whole different, way to experience it. But in actuality, it's the same thing. It just happened quicker because of the technology of today. But it was just like a wonderful life. Same type of situation. If you lose confidence in that bank, and there's a run on, they've got that money invested long term, and all of a sudden people are demanding it, the next day or the same day. There's not much the bank could do, and that's why the Fed stepped in.
And I think in these situations, people try to find the connection to them and to their money. So when we have a bank collapse happen, is there really an impact on our immediate area?
Well, there is, again, with that confidence aspect. It shook the stock market. It hit Toledo area banks and what have you. So from that perspective, it did have an influence. But as far as anything that a contagion or anything that came to Ohio, it really didn't. So it was more just a psychological aspect, and I think that's why the Fed acted right away, just to make sure that they nip it in the bud before it starts spreading elsewhere.
And in terms of security, when it comes to banking, how secure do you think our money is? Because I know people in this time, they like reassurance, but what's the reality? Is it as safe as we think it is, or like to think it is?
Well, again, if it's a deposit that's insured, you've got that $250,000 coverage. What we do with clients, that have millions of dollars and they want it guaranteed, you can buy T-bills, short term, and that's backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. So you can't get any safer than that. And if you want it in CDs or with a bank, I would keep it to that 250,000 and just have, we have some clients that have 10, 12 banking relationships because of that. So don't get complacent thinking, well, everybody was insured, over the 250 with the first two banks, because there's no guarantee they'll do that, in the future. And that's why I'd rather err on the side of caution, Jaden.
And my final question for you, I don't like making people predict the future, but 2023 is still a fairly new year. So what do you think 2023 could hold in terms of the banking system? Could we see this happen again?
Yeah, I think you could. Our banking system is fairly solid, but it's a situation with some of those smaller banks. What happened is interest rates rose so quickly. A year ago, you could barely get a % interest. Right now, you can get 4 or 5%, and that caught a lot of the banks. And it wasn't the regulations as much as the adherence to the regulations. And the banks didn't expect this run on cash and the liquidity event. So yeah, it definitely could happen again. I think that's why they're monitoring it so closely. And it's a matter of really making sure the regulators are doing their thing to warn the banks, but really the banks should have internal processes in place and have that liquidity for something like this. So whenever you have human error, it can obviously happen again. But again, not to worry if you're 250,000 or less, because you're going to be covered.
For sure. And this is definitely an interesting situation in talking about Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. So really, I guess what we're saying here is anything could happen, but there are processes in place. And Alan Lancz, an investment advisor here in the area, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. You have a good rest of the week.
Thank you. You too. And that's this week's Community Focus. Have a great week.